What is the creepiest missing person case you know about? The Missing Germans. It's a long read, but it's fascinating. Basically, some German tourists decided to go on an adventure in Death Valley in a rented minivan, with no real idea how stupid that is. A fellow documents his attempts to find out what happened to them. My mom's friend's son has been missing since November. Kid's 13 and has epilepsy, and his mom has been very shifty in her statements about it. It's just creepy to me because this is someone I know, who is either dead or hidden. There's just no way the kid's been out in the wilderness living this entire time. This isn't Hatchet. Holy shit, I did not expect so many people to see this. I commented it later down in the thread, but I'll add it here too. Don't witch hunt the kid's mom. Everyone in my city has been doing it since November, and in the scenario that she is innocent, she's probably haunted by this. Her own son is gone and she's a prime suspect, and considering she is so obviously the prime suspect, don't you think the police would have found something out had she done it? I know everyone would like to believe they are Sherlock Holmes, but please, don't start a vigilante investigation. It won't help. Just put all efforts into finding him, not attacking his mother. Edit 2. For anyone who might still see this, bones were found that are almost guaranteed to be his. Think the search is over, guys. Very coincidental that they found them a day after this too. The Brandon Lawson case. Around 2 AM he was in a field in Texas and called 911. In the call it's hard to hear what he says, but he sounds distressed and panicked. He cuts off, and that was the last he was heard of. His brother said he called him after, but he has yet to be found. It sounds like said he ran into something and mentions he was chased in the woods. Somewhere else someone edited the audio, and it sounds like gunshots in the background of the call. Allegedly at 1:03 you can barely hear a faint, "Help me." The 911 call. Edit. I was informed by some redditors that he had a felony warrant out for his arrest, so he was more scared of whatever he encountered than he was of going to jail, because he specifically requested the cops regardless. Johnny Gorsh. Kid gets kidnapped while doing his morning paperboy route, and more than likely forced into ex-slavery for files. Mother claims that Johnny visited her at night 15 years later, talked with her for an hour while another man watched, and then vanished again. 10 years later, a manila envelope shows up on her doorstep with pictures of Johnny bound and gagged. The rabbit hole goes much deeper, especially if you get into Paul Bonacci and the Franklin cover-up, but that's the skinny. The disappearance of Asher Degree. This case isn't creepy as in Twilight Zone theme plays, but in that she had a good family, she was a good kid, everything should have been fine and without risk, and this girl still vanished. February 14, 2000. Asher Degree is 9 years old. It is not only Valentine's Day, but her parents' wedding anniversary. And Asher is missing. Adults in her life sheltered her. To fault? There was no computer or internet in the home. No cell phone. Asher's friends were from church or school. No one she interacted with was an unknown. A stranger would have had no access to her. She was either at church with family, school, at a relative's home, or her own home with her parents and brother. I say this to illustrate that even in the early days of chat rooms and messaging, Asher would not have been using these things to meet someone online. Anyone unfamiliar in her life should have been quickly spotted. But what we know is that the night of February 13 to 14th, Asher crept out of bed, dressed, and brought a packed backpack with her as she went into the night. But for what? Asher was afraid of storms and dogs, yet that night was pouring, cold rain, and she was alone with no one to cling to as she usually would when walking past yards with dogs. She was an obedient child who did not break rules. At 2:30 AM, her father is awake and checks on his children. They are both in bed, safe. 3:15 AM. Drivers on Highway 18 think they see a little girl walking in the rain, over a mile from the Degree home. When one driver circles around to check if the child needs help, the child runs off the road into the woods. If this was Asher, it is the last time she is seen alive. How she managed to walk over a mile in such short time In driving rain at night all by herself? Or was there a car waiting for her outside her house? Did she willingly climb in? Was she let out or did she escape? Candy wrappers, markers, and a hair bow are discovered in a shed back in the woods the child ran into. They belonged to Asher. A year later, during construction, her backpack is discovered buried in the ground, wrapped in several plastic bags. There has been no more clues as to what happened to this little girl. A popular theory is, somehow she was lured out. Someone told her maybe it's a surprise party for her parents' anniversary. We know she packed family photos and a change of clothes, one outfit being somewhat dressy. Asher is a good kid who doesn't tell lies. She had to be convinced this was a good secret to keep. One that her parents will be happy she kept, and she won't be scolded for sneaking out and breaking rules. This person would have to know her family, and not stick out as strange when talking to her. But why is she walking along the road? Did she escape this person only to be recaptured? Another theory centers around the book she read in school, The Whipping Boy. In the book, the characters run away and have an adventure. But remember, Asher is scared of the dark, storms, dogs. Why would she have a fun adventure on such a night? Why would she break so many rules along the way? It's out of character for her. This case, it just shouldn't have happened. The facts are simply bizarre, and what we know just doesn't seem to fit. The police ruled out her parents, but could they know more? With no access to internet, who could have manipulated a shy, obedient girl to fight against all her deep fears, and vanish? Considering they found her book back buried, I think it's safe to assume she was abducted. Could have run into some man at school or something, who told her to come out and not tell anyone. Very strange that she walked a mile in the rain in the dark though. The daughter of a friend of my mother went missing a few years ago. While they were looking for her, news crews interviewed a friend of hers from class, who was distraught. During the interview, he said he hoped she could be found, and they informed him that they had just found a piece of her body. At this, he went pale and had to walk away and sit down on the sidewalk. Sometime later, it was discovered that he was the one who did it. Disappearance of Susan Powell. This one is heart-wrenching. I was so absorbed in it when it was still going on, but it's been a while since I looked into it. Apparently Susan went missing, and her husband said he took his kids late night camping, leaving in the middle of the night and returning the next day. In the middle of winter. And his wife was gone when he returned. So much points to him murdering her. Her phone and belongings were still at home. Her family didn't hear from her. She had made it clear that if something happened to her, her husband was responsible. He had been abusive and possessive. Oh, and a large wet spot on the carpet with a fan blowing on it when police arrived. Oh, and the kids saying they knew they'd never see their mom again. That she wasn't around when they were awoken in the middle of the night and put into the front seat of the van to go camping. Very, very sad ending, where it came out that the husband's father was involved with child pornography, and the husband never being charged. He moved the kids out of state eventually, and exploded the house they were living in, with all three of them inside. As far as I remember, no closure on Susan being found, no body, no justice, no answers. It baffles me. My daughter stopped in the same spot every day while walking home from school. Then my wife or I would pick her up. I argued and eventually convinced them that it was not okay. She needed to either stay at school or walk home. About couple days later, a car was stopped across the street. Two guys, older teenagers, hanging out, doors open listening to music. When my daughter was across the street, one of the guys started sprinting towards her. She ran. Guy stopped chasing after about a block. She told me about this, and I thought it was nothing, just teenagers screwing with a little kid. Then she told me that when the one guy started chasing her, the other guy turned the music up loud, blasting it. That made my blood run cold. It was no longer couple guys screwing around. It was someone who noticed her pattern and had a plan. Sorry for the obligatory, this story isn't exactly what was asked for, but it haunts me. Edit, our neighborhood is a little removed, no outside traffic comes through. And it isn't likely the people who tried to abduct her were from around here. Which raises an unanswerable question or two. Oh, this girl who was working alone got dragged out of gas station, all seen on camera. The footage was so bad they couldn't figure out who it was, so they put out a message in the paper with his coat description. Someone eventually says their janitor always wears that coat. They go to the guy's house and search non-stop over and over again. They find a single burnt tooth in the backyard. It would have been inconclusive, but the girl had gone to a dentist conference and got a just on the market filling that only like 2 people in the world had, so they caught him. The 2 Dutch girls who got lost in the jungle in Panama. Went for a day hike, didn't turn back, and apparently got lost deep in the forest during the rainy season. Creepiest thing is that their phones were discovered in a backpack downriver, fully intact, along with a camera that had photos. Normal, happy photos of them on the trail taken just an hour before their internal phone records showed they started trying to call 911, or equivalent, for help. And 90 other photos taken in the rainy darkness in the middle of the night, between 1 and 4 AM, a week after they disappeared, methodically showing a cliff and some bushes, and some impromptu markers made of what little things they had brought with them. Fragments of their bodies, bones, and a boot with a foot still in it, were found a couple months later, but nobody really knows for sure how they died. Accident on the trail? Fell into the rapids? Murdered and then someone was playing with their phones? Don't know, this story creeped me out big time. A local one for me, but the case of Dakota James. TLDR, a Pittsburgh college student named Dakota James goes missing. Police say he fell in the river, city residents disagree. A bunch of guys went missing around that time, and they all had the same gay dating app on their phone. My sister. Ending is positive. She went missing during high school. She started hanging with the wrong crowd, got into drugs and just disappeared one day. 2 years went by. Not a word. Then one day, my mom spotted the truck of the guy she was seeing when she went missing. It was parked at a hotel. We have a few police in our family, so they went to check it out. Sure enough, it was her with this scummy guy. Guy was wanted, went to jail. Sister went to rehab. She is now a college grad, clean for over 10 to 15 years. Has 2 beautiful kids, and a genuinely great husband. She is a living success story.